Differential reinforcement strategies can be used to efficiently reduce undesirable behavior. But should we use them? And what are the different types available? It is Jose here from Train Me Please. Let's go. Differential reinforcement comes from applied behavior analysis science, and it is most commonly studied and applied with children. It relies on the principle of reinforcing appropriate behavior and withholding reinforcement for inappropriate behavior. Let's start with differential reinforcement of incompatible behavior, DRI. This one requires reinforcing a behavior that is incompatible with the problem behavior. For example, if a dog greets a person by jumping up, we can choose sitting as an incompatible behavior. In this instance, we would reinforce the sitting behavior and ignore the jumping behavior. Next, we have differential reinforcement of alternative behavior, DRA. This one involves reinforcing an alternative desirable behavior while withholding reinforcement for an undesirable behavior. For example, if a dog barks to gain access to the backyard, we could choose to ignore this behavior whilst granting the access when the dog calmly stands in front of the door. Then we have differential reinforcement of other behavior, DRO. DRO involves reinforcing the individual when the inappropriate behavior does not occur for a specific amount of time. For instance, if a dog started leaving their bed during dinner time, we could set a timer for 10 minutes, and if the dog remained in bed for that time, we would offer them a stuffed Kong. The next one is differential reinforcement of low rates, DRL. DRL involves a reduction in the frequency of a given behavior. The behavior itself is not necessarily inappropriate, but its frequency is. For example, if a dog approaches you for petting 5 times in any given 10-minute block, you might decide to only reinforce them with pats when they approach you 4 times in a 10-minute block. Later on, you can decrease that to 3 times in a 10-minute block, and so on and so forth. The successful use of DRL involves establishing a baseline at the start. There is one more to go and some super important considerations about all of them coming up in just a second. But first, could you please click the like button so that more people can find this content? Cute photo as a thanks. We then have differential reinforcement of high rates, DRH. Sometimes the learner might show the correct behavior, but at a rate below what we want to see. Using DRH, we can systematically reinforce incremental increases in the rate of that behavior. For example, let's imagine that you establish that when you are home and offer your dog a certain environmental enrichment item or toy, they tend to approach and interact with it twice every half hour. You set your first criteria at 3 interactions per half hour and reinforce the dog when it happens. Over time, as he becomes more successful, you gradually increase the criteria they need to meet in order to gain reinforcement. Once again, you need some baseline data here as well. Actually, we should gather baseline data, identify the function of the current behavior, determine target behaviors, and effective reinforcers for all of these procedures. But hang on. Should we even be using these procedures for effective teaching? In applied behavior analysis, withholding reinforcement for a previously reinforced behavior is called extinction. Extinction can create problems. It has emotional baggage and it can cause extinction bursts. This means that the behavior can actually get worse before it gets better. Not only does this have some implications regarding conditioned emotional responses, but if we are dealing with aggressive behavior, extinction bursts can be highly dangerous. In general, we should always aim to prioritize learning by using good antecedent arrangement and positive reinforcement. For the jumping dog, it would be much better to set up the situation so that the dog is extremely likely to sit when greeting us, as opposed to waiting for the dog to start jumping to then ignore that behavior and subsequently reinforce the sitting behavior. Maybe we can cue the sit behavior before jumping starts. Maybe we can set up a barrier that dramatically decreases the chances of the dog jumping in the first place. When we have an option that decreases the chances of the learner making mistakes, we should opt for that behavior intervention. I made this neat little flyer that summarizes all this information. You can easily download it for a very small fee. That would be an awesome way to support my work and my mission for better understanding of behavior modification procedures. I will leave a link to it in the description below. Could you leave me a comment with the keyword reinforcement? That will let me know that you watched the video to this point. Next, I think you will like this video here. Muito obrigado. Ciao.